Welcome to the 12 Talk podcast. My name's Josh. This is my co-host Mitch. Thank you if you're tuning back in, if you're a returning viewer. We really appreciate it. Now, we're going to go with a little where do we go from here pod today. It was nearly called something else, but we'll try and keep it sort of with a flow. We're going to be looking at things like the state of the roster currently. We'll be looking at next year's possibilities. Mitch was also the Seahawks GM in the Walk the Mock. Where are you, mate? So we'll talk about that as well. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to all your friends, your mum, your dad, your sister, your brother, your auntie, that weird cousin you see once a year. We don't really mind. If you like what we do, you can always buy us a coffee. The link will be in the description. It doesn't have to be a coffee. It's, I'm on 3 months worth of annual leave now, so a beer's fine. And I'm pretty sure Mitch would appreciate one too. And as always, don't forget to join our Discord. It's still a growing community, and it's just growing bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where I can't keep up with conversations anymore. I dip in and out and go, oh, what's this? As always, we are working with the UK Seahawkers. If you'd like to join, you have just missed out on the free or the chance to win a signed Walter Jones photo, but it's £12 for the year for a membership for an individual, £20 for a family. You get some fantastic goodies. This year is all the throwback stuff, which was amazing. Still wearing the wristband, got everything else behind me. And then we have the chance for a national meetup, which is in Newark-on-Trent this year. Always amazing just to get together with like-minded UK Seahawkers and talk about the state of what's going on. But Mitch, as we are ready to go and we know what we're doing, should we hit the theme music and get into it?
Let's do it.
Back at it again. Absolutely love it. So let's get into this, Mitch. First of all, shall we start with how are you? How's your Easter weekend been?
Yeah, no, it's good actually. I've eaten so much chocolate. Spent time eating lots of roast dinners with family, and hosted a poker game on the Friday night, which I came third in. So just missed out on the money, but the house can't always win, right?
I said, if you host and win, it's like, it's got to be fixed call at some point. Well, that sounds all right. I had a family gathering yesterday. Daylight savings time has royally screwed my daughter's bodily clock, so she's awake at a ridiculous hour, and she's still awake now. So fun times. I've just been looking forward to getting into this. As I said in the intro, you were the Seahawks GM for Walk the Mock's Mock. How did it go? Tell us all about it. And for anyone who doesn't know, Walk the Mock is a mock draft simulator. Mitch will tell you all about it now. I've had a look into it, and it looks brilliant. We'll be using that going forward, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Really cool. I mean, Walk the Mock, where it differs to other mock simulation engines, so it's got quite a lot of really cool features that are sort of collaborative and live. So if you imagine you're part of like a fantasy group, and you've got the ability there to create a lobby to start a draft with that group, well, you've got the ability to do that on Walk the Mock. You can just start a lobby, say it starts in 20 minutes, you select your team, so we'd select the Seahawks, and in 20 minutes time it'll start, and a Kansas City Chief fan might have join the lobby and click the Chiefs. Someone might have joined for the Chargers. The rest will all be AI, but there'll be multiple actual players playing that draft with you. So you can make it a 7-rounder, a 2-rounder. So the Walk the Mock draft I was part of was one for content creators. So Dan Viens was obviously first person asked to do it. He said yes. His work commitments then meant he couldn't do it, and he put us forward as a podcast to represent the Seahawks, which was
Thank you, Dan.
Which was amazing. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, so I got to be John Schneider, and I went into it with, you know, with these visions that I'm going to trade back and I'm going to get a second round pick, because they decided they were going to do 2 rounds, right? So I didn't want to be just pick at 16 and then done and I've got to watch, right? I didn't want to be a voyeur for the whole thing. So I decided that I was going to do everything I could to trade back, to the extent that before it started, I was sending PMs to the other podcasters on X, trying to just, do you know that there's going to be someone for you at 16. You need to get up and take our pick, and I'll take your second rounder. I was trying to get in there before anyone else, but the way it worked out was really interesting, right? And there's so many things that happened in that mock that I think could really happen, or are at danger of happening before our 16th pick, which is going to really affect us. So the biggest one, I think, was how much the content creator for the Colts wanted to get rid of their 15th. And the market for his 15th was the same market for our 16th. So when you're going through mock draft simulators and you're getting offers from the Eagles, from the Lions, from the Chiefs, from the Packers, they're also going to be interested in the Colts pick. Granted, there are going to be guys on the board for the Colts to pick that are genuine upgrades for their system. But I think the Colts see themselves, now that they've got Anthony Richardson, in a similar position where they want to build that roster around him, rather than being in a position where they're ready to win and they want to, take the highest prospect or the best immediate impact they can. They're still building a roster around their expensive acquisition. So the Colts are as desperate to lose that 15th as we are. And honestly, that caused me problems arranging a trade. My best opportunity to trade was with the Lions. I managed to agree a trade with the Lions. They wanted to give us first round and third round and a future day 3. Obviously, I wanted first and second. I was willing to chuck in a future fourth, or a future 5th, future third, or a this year 4th, basically. So around a 4th pick level, in exchange for the second, and then a move back on the first with the Lions, which ended up being agreed, but it was conditional on their guy being there at 16, and their guy was taken by the team that traded up with the Colts. So, John Schneider, I sympathize massively. When we complained that you didn't trade back, you could have the best laid plans ready and other things before you fall a different way. The teams you've negotiated the best deals with go. I completely see it. So in the end, we picked at 16 and we took Troy Fatanu. And the next interesting thing is that Talisa Fuaga was there, who most people until now would have said is a top 10 pick in this draft. And I took Troy Fatanu instead. And I, all the way through this pre-draft process until now, I would never have made that decision. But I think the combine, how good he looked at the combine and how good he looked at his pro day, has maybe put him on a level with Fuaga. And the tiebreaker for me when I made that decision was the fact that we know Fatanu better within our coaching team than we know Fuaga. So maybe I sort of stumbled across, something that could very well come into play on day 1.
I think that's very realistic. I mean, if you can't trade back, and if it does come between the two, when you look at Grubb as the OC, and I can't remember the O-line coordinator he brought in. Yeah, Huff. When you look at the fact that they're already in the building on the coaching staff, they're going to say, look, we know this guy, we know his strengths, we know what we want to keep working on, and we know how good he can be. It's a realistic scenario. I think because I tuned in, I wasn't going to do it because it started at midnight UK time. And as I alluded to earlier, I've got a 4-year-old who doesn't know what time it is in the morning, so I need to try and sleep at some point. But I tuned in on the YouTube live just to see what was happening. I caught your pick and then just put it on whilst I was dozing off. The biggest shock for me, and I think for you as well, was who went number one. And it was
Drake May went number one. Yeah.
Bears fans not sold on the Caleb experience.
It felt like a protest. I'm going to be honest. it felt like the content creator that was selected to represent the Bears has had enough of Caleb Williams, and I feel like he almost wanted to put it out there that not everybody is sold on him coming into the building. I think if you were to sit down with those guys who represented the Bears and actually talk to them, they'd openly admit Williams is going to be a Bear. We know that he's going to be a Bear, but we're not massively sold on him as a personality, as a leader, potential leader of our team for at least the next 4 or 5 years. So I felt like it was a bit of a protest. And of course, who was waiting there to snap him up? The Commanders. Couldn't believe their luck.
Honestly, if that happened in the actual draft, I don't even think a minute or I don't think 30 seconds would elapse before the pick is in. I just to quickly address the whole Caleb Williams thing, because it's been going off on social media. But he had pink nail varnish and a pink foam, and people have said this isn't a leader of men. Who cares? Just do you. The guy has got talent. It doesn't matter if he paints his nails, if he perms his hair, if he wears eyeshadow. He's a stellar player. He's shown that he's a leader of men. Just do you. Focus on yourself rather than focusing on the fact that someone else who's going to be a fantastic sporting position is wearing nail varnish. No one cares.
Well, funnily enough, he reacted to the posts and everything. That he put up a video, and he showed that no nail varnish on my fingernails. That was photoshopped in, and then he showed his phone. He actually has a pink iPhone, but he has a clear case on it, and he was like, yeah, like there's not that many colors of iPhones, so it's either black or silver or gold, which looks horrible in my opinion.
Yeah,
light blue, or it's pink, and he's like, I just don't care. And he said, the only thing here that's pink is my lips, because he does have quite pink lips.
So, yeah.
And then he said, and I thought, do you know what? He's doing all right here. Like, honestly, he came across quite well. And then he went, and the women loved my lips, and I was like, okay, ruined it. Immediately looks a douche again.
it was like humble and then douchebag.
Yeah, and he can't go a full video without something annoying someone. I think
to be honest, it's, and just for anyone watching, thank you for tuning in. This is not a woke pod, but I'm very much of the mindset of I operate what's called my 3-foot circle. If it's outside of my 3-foot circle of influence, I don't care. You do you. And if he's going to do him that way, let him do it. He'll put all the results out on the football field. But anyway, so that was the walk, the mock. It was interesting to see, and you guys can see it. They've got it on their YouTube page as well. And we'll try and put a link in the description for afterwards.
We shared the live stream on our Twitter as well.
Yeah,
on our X, so you can watch the rerun if you want to go and take a look.
There you go. It's all over our X. But for this, obviously, we have called this pod, Where Do We Go From Here? It was nearly called something new or something different until I was talked out of it by Mitch. I think Mitch, quite a few Seahawks fans now are, unless you're completely delusional, this is not a 1 year, let's fix it, first year and go. This is at least a 2-year job. We are filling in roster holes where we're going to look at, my personal opinion, in this draft, we'll try and draft some premium players in those positions of need, and then we'll fill the rest in with just some other guys on 1-year contracts and whatnot. And then next season, when we go to the next draft, we'll look at doing that and filling the other roster spots, the other holes. Mitch, you in agreement with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, we thought Mitch has done a lot of work with this. I'm going to hand this over to Mitch. I'll share it. Mitch can tell me what to do with it. But Mitch has gone through the roster in depth to say who we've got, how long they're signed for, how long they've got left, if they've got any fifth-year options that can be signed. But just to illuminate it for people, we've got sort of the remaining years people have. We've got the verdict that sort of we think on the positional groups, and then we've got what's needed. So there's people looking into the future. Mitch, I will share this, and Scott, thank you very much for your question. We will definitely get to that.
We might answer that one when we do the wide receiver group, because I think that ties in quite well.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So let's start looking at the offense.
Yeah, cool. So here, I don't know if we can make that a little bigger. Are you able to
let's see.
Should be able to. Top left where it says 100%. If you flip that to like 130%. There we go.
How's that for you? There you go.
Beautiful. Yeah. So as you can see on here, the yellow square on 2026 shows a fifth-year option. So you can see that the starting offensive line currently is those top 6 players, and you can see you're going to be relying on George Fant and Tremaine Anchoram to play fairly significant either rotational or starting snaps. I'm okay with it on the pretense that there's going to be some high-level draft picks mixed in with that. I think that blend you could make a passing offensive line with, and depending on how high we pick, we could balance that out. I also think that when you look at players like Stone Forsyth at the bottom there, Nick Harris and Anchoram, those guys are all playing to prove it. Nick Harris has returned to the Pacific Northwest. He'd obviously ideally find a team in that corner of the map where his family are from, and where that is an ideal situation for someone to really knuckle down and try and work their way into a starting berth in a roster. So you've got 3 guys there: Stone Forsyth, Nick Harris, and Anchoram, who are all fighting for NFL careers. And then above that, the guys you've got there are all starting caliber NFL players, mix in some draft picks. That for me actually can look quite good, but it is fully reliant on a free agent veteran or a high-level draft pick.
Yep.
And I think that graphic kind of shows the contract lengths are actually pretty healthy as well. So if that starting lineup can work, we've got them there for enough time to enjoy lower contract hits on players like Bradford, Cross, Oluwatimi, and Lucas. So there is a way in which that can be a real success for a prolonged period of time. That's my take.
I mean, just quickly, Stone Forsyth is one of those players that I watched when he was at the U, and I thought he could do a job. He just doesn't seem to have lived up to the hype. I'm looking forward when we get to the sort of the verdicts and the scores that you've given on these positional groups. I had a quick look earlier, and I'll be interested to see what the people watching live think, because by all means, you can pop a comment in there, whether it's on X, YouTube, or Facebook. Let us know what you think of our grades on these. And if you have any comments on any of the players, just pop it in there. Right, the running backs.
Yeah, I don't think we'll dwell on this for too long, because I think if there's one room that I'm very content with, it's this one. The only downside I can see on here is the fact that Ken Walker's not more than 2 more years, because he was a second-round pick. We don't have that option for the 5th year. Nor do I necessarily think it's a good choice on a running back. I think you're at risk of overpaying a running back extending on a 5th year, and 2025 I would very much see him being a key candidate to extend, save cap space, and keep around. So not too worried there. That's the only downside I can see. Bryant Kobach, who I think we had from Vikings practice squad.
Yeah,
he's done enough in preseason previously for us for me to think that he can do a serious job if we're strapped with injuries and things as well. So I do think that Bryant Kobach has got a role to play if called upon as well. That's quite a good running back 4.
So you're saying we're not going to draft Frank Gore Jr. at the back end of the draft then?
Please no.
I
like him. I like him, but I just don't want to be tied to 49er history if I can avoid it.
Well, with the amount of, I'll say, older players that we watched in our youth, I say this now as a 39-year-old man, all of their kids are coming through. So you see,
Yeah.
them, obviously, you've got Jerry Rice's kid, you've got Frank Gore, there's
Shadir
multiple,
Sanders.
all,
Well, not
all
Shadir
the
Sanders
Sanders.
next year, but the other
Yeah.
Sanders is this year, right? I can't remember the first
Yeah.
name. Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course, Chris Jenkins as well.
Yeah, there you go. It's
Plenty
another.
of 'em.
It's just pedigree, that isn't it? That's my dad plays. My dad plays in the league. I'm going to play in the league as well, which is, let's face it, that's a decent aspiration to have.
Opens a few doors as well.
That's it. Wide receivers.
Yeah, this is such a healthy looking room. I think we'll come to my grading and stuff as well, but the last stream I wouldn't necessarily spend a draft pick on, and I think I'm only spending a draft pick on the wide receiver room if it's a later pick and it's an intriguing prospect with traits that we don't necessarily have. I haven't even put D. Eskridge on that sheet, and consider that me throwing as much shade as humanly possible at D. Eskridge, but he's not even on there. So to have a player of that caliber, a second round pick, 3 years ago, not featured on that list shows the depth we've got, and also 2 years on each of those guys, apart from Njigba, who potentially there's 4 on. Again, I'm not sure we'd use that option, but in a pinch, it's there, right? So really healthy looking room, and we'll come to the verdicts after. But
I
any
think
point to make there?
I think JSN, because when you look at the ages there, Tyler Lockett's 31 when he retires. JSN is going to be wide receiver 2. I think he's one that we probably look to extend when we get him more into the game plan. To answer Scott's question, which we'll get to now, what should we do with DK? Trade or extend? I'd be in favour of extending. I think if this new coaching team can get the best out of DK and show that he is that electric talent that we all think he is, but it's never put together properly, I'd extend. Having a weapon like that, unless you can get a carbon copy in the draft, in the sort of the lower like draft picks, you're not going to find another one. That's my personal opinion, Mitch.
Yeah, I think the only thing that would really threaten DK's position as wide receiver 1 for the future rosters would be if Jackson Smith-Njigba was a similar type, sort of 6'2" plus burner. He's neither the physical presence or the burner. He is a completely different thing. So I can see a future where JSN and Metcalf become the new Metcalf and Lockett. They're the next duo on the right. So I don't see a threat there. The only thing I could see is if Mike Mack comes in and wants to have slightly more juice on the defense, like maybe he wants. Some people take this opinion that he'll groom late draft picks for his defense and allow the offense to have enough power to put plenty of points up on the board to give them something to defend. He could very well go the other way and try to be as stingy as possible and then lean on a running game and a good O-line. We don't know how that goes. And extending DK Metcalf on potential, I don't know if it's market setting money, but it's going to be competitive with that.
Yeah.
For 3 years minimum, I would say. Maybe that isn't palatable, and maybe a trade suddenly becomes it would be a trade for a decent draft pick, plus create a cavity in the cap space for him to pick up some key free agents as well. So I personally think we keep DK and we extend, but there is a world where the opposite happens. So it's a very valid question for me.
So all we need to do now is wait and see if Derek Young comes out and has a breakout season. Who is DK 2.0? He's just the bargain bin version of DK, or it's more Bobo this season. Because if it's more Bobo, then they start weighing up their options with the cap and what they can get out of the wide receivers that'll be on much cheaper contracts. So I'd be in favour of doing it, Mitch. I thought so. You said you're in favour, but there's scenarios where it couldn't happen, and I'm completely on board with it. So tight ends, the position group that everyone was really worried about to start with, and now it actually looks okay.
It looks functional. I don't think it looks threatening, and I don't think it looks deep, and I don't like the age profile, but we'll come to that in the verdict. If I've got 2 guys sat behind Fant and Brown, I want them to be projects that we're grooming into starting and I look at those two. I think Mabry's been on the roster there or abouts for a long time, hasn't ever really started to develop to challenge. I know last year's tight end group was really good. Those three we had, neither of them were top talents, but all three of them were very, very passable in the league and created a really strong room. That now doesn't look like that to me. I think it's very top heavy, and the age range there doesn't suggest starters and projects. But we'll come to the verdicts afterwards. What's your take on that?
I'm very much the same. I think age-wise, a tight end is one of those really weird positions because it all depends on how you use them. And this is what we're going to see in a Grubb-led offense, whether or not we use them. I think we all know that Noah Fant is going to be your receiving field stretching threat. Pharaoh Brown's in there. He has got receiving ability, but he's just an inline blocker. Mabry has been a project with this team since birth. Basically, he could be a meme saying it's been 84 years because that's what it feels like. It feels like he's been on the roster for that long. And then every now and again, we elevate him from the practice squad and he does bits and then he goes back down and you don't hear from him until something like this happens. And then Brady Russell, who I believe we took from, was he the Eagles practice squad?
I know we sniped him from another NFC practice squad. I think it was the Eagles. Yeah. That sounds about right to me.
That's a TBD,
Yeah, for sure.
We don't know what's going to happen with him, how he's going to fit into this. If they like him, he could be elevated to that tight end 3. This whole season, and this is the drum that I keep banging, it's just unknown after unknown after unknown. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what type of offense Grubb's going to run because he's not going to run the exact same one that he had at the Huskies. It'll be similar. Like I said, it's spread West Coast. But I think there's going to be some subtle differences in there, which may involve using the tight ends more, using, more sort of maybe 2 running back sets. We don't know. We might actually start using a fullback, in which case Tariq Young's going to see loads of the field. Or Levi Bell might get a nod there, which I think we alluded to last year on another pod we were on, that I think he could fit that mold.
Yeah, I still think that could work. Before we go to defense, let's go to verdict on let's keep it offense through slide 1, 2, 3, and then we can go back. I think it's probably good to address it while we're fresh on it. So, verdict on the O-line here. I've got starting quality C. I think I mentioned before, free agent acquisition or a high draft pick makes that potentially a B. Starting quality, I think that's fair. Depth, I've got a D there, and it's mostly because whilst that is a room of 8 players, I think cover at certain positions is just not thick enough in the interior in particular. And we've got question marks over the quality of Nick Harris and how much of a quality backup he can be and how much of a quality starter Oluwatimi is now. So depth there at a D. Age profile A+. You look through those ages, it's only really George Fant that stands out. And I don't mind having a vet on that line. Hell, I'd be quite happy to have another one, to be honest. Contract length B+. We saw on the graphic previously, there's quite a lot of 2 to 3 years on there. So if some of these are projects for the franchise, we've got the years to make that come to fruition. So that was my essentially there. Depth questionable, starting quality, everything else there fine.
Great. I mean, and this is, like you said it before, if we can keep this O-line together and fit, because there's still question marks over Abe Lucas. I know we get told that he's on the right road to recovery, but if it's a degenerative knee issue, you don't know how available he's going to be, which obviously is why we've given Fant the money that we've given him as a swing tackle. But I'm with you. I think the age profile is fantastic. This year, I'm not expecting them to be world beaters, but if we can keep them together for 2 to 3 years, I think that's going to be a great unit. And like I said, with the addition of a young, I want to say exceptional guard in there, I think that could be a starting offensive line for years to come. So complete agreement. Running back room.
Yeah, high grades here, and I think that won't surprise people. Hello, Jonas. I see you there in the comments. We're going to do D-line. D-line is the first category on the defensive part, so we're coming to that real soon. we expected to see high grades here. Age profile, obviously great. Contract length, great. We've got running back 1, 2, and 3, all draft picks from the last 2 years. That is not a thing I want to play with particularly. I'm quite content. I think that kind of shows.
I think it's probably without seeing people like McIntosh, actually take the field. We've seen what he did in college and what he brings to a running back room. Like I said, I hope that they start using Charbonnet the way he needs to be used, up the gut, just running through that A and B gap and just ploughing through people. And Ken Walker, just let him do his thing, whether that's having to run across and back the line or hit gaps, go on the outside, whatever. I think that's my favourite group by way of sort of the quality. Just like I said, 1 to 3 there. I think Colback can do a job if we need it, but it might not be essential, especially when you've got Ken Walker, who proved he can be a receiving threat and is obviously a running threat. Charbonnet also can be a receiving threat and is a total different change of pace back. And then you've got Kenny McIntosh, who is a receiving threat, a running threat, not the biggest of bodies, but he can still do the job. He's a nice mix, if you ask me, in between Walker and Charbonnet. So I really like that. Wide receiver group.
Yeah, similar story here, with the only real obvious downgrade there is the C for contract length, and most of that is due to Tyler Lockett's new deal not being a long one because of his age, and DK Metcalf needing renewing very soon. Derek Young has lost a year on his 4 years due to injury. In fact, 1.5 really. I think he had injury in year 1 as well. So he feels it doesn't feel right that he's 2 years remaining, but it's been ripped away from us. So yeah, overall the room is not particularly tied up in contracts, but in terms of depth, quality, age profile, all of those are strong grades for me with that room.
Agreed. I think the age profile, especially when you look at that sort of mid-20s coming into their prime, JSN will be 22, possibly 23 when the season starts. So he's really young, getting starting reps, and he's just going to keep getting better and better the more experience he gets in the league. Tyler, as we've all said, he's 31. He's got possibly a season 2 maximum left. It's not like if he decides to retire, he's going to be out of pocket, because he is the Seahawks' preferred real estate partner. So he's still there. He's still housing people and doing bits. So yeah, I mean, I like that group as it is. I would like to see us draft another young, like you said earlier. So for me, someone like a McMillan, I think would slot into that Lockett role really well as a third receiver maybe, and then obviously move JSN up to second receiver, which I think we might see more this season anyway, because they're going to be future planning. As we said at the start of the pod, this is at least a 2-year retooling. But yeah, I completely agree with that. And then the tight end room.
Yeah, so we see an F on this one, and it's the contract length. And I think Noah Fant and Brown, obviously, they are free agents coming in. One of them, one of our own, obviously one of them off the Patriots.
Pats, yeah.
But then 2 guys that are renewed on a yearly basis, or will be renewed on a yearly basis as depth pieces that potentially aren't the kind of quality that we want on the depth chart. So F there for that. Age profile, that's probably one of our oldest position groups as well. Average on there probably being around 27. The problem I have with that group, I did briefly touch on it, is the fact that there aren't projects in there. The age profile and everything shows you that they've got to this stage. They're not on a roster competing for starting snaps. The ship may well have sailed there, and perhaps it's time to take a new project on. But the starting quality B-, I think Fant and Brown, they both have clear roles to perform. They're clear roles that they excel in, and it is up to us play calling and drawing up plays to allow them to excel in the run blocking, in pass protection, and as a yak threat and as a receiving threat. So over to the coaches, really.
Agreed. I think either Maybury had something on Pete Carroll to keep him getting renewed year on year.
There were some photos of something dodgy.
That's it. Or he's genuinely just someone that maybe John Schneider looks at and says, we can do something with him. He's a fantastic backup piece. He's great on the practice squad. We can throw him into a game if needs be. Now, for contract length, like I said, it'll just be a yearly renewal for him, a constant. Brady Russell, if they like him, that could be the project there. But at 25, you'd want someone slightly younger to have as a project, which means we could look in the latter end of this draft. Who's to say there's no training camp cuts for them? Tyler Maybury may have to clear out his apartment at the VBAC.
Yeah, I don't see us having 5 tight ends on the roster. I struggle to see us having 4. So if we do draft a tight end, almost certainly Brady Russell goes back on the practice squad. And I'm not sure if he goes on the practice squad that he stays there.
Mm-hmm.
So it could well be that Brady Russell moves to another franchise based on being picked off our practice squad, to be honest, if we draft one.
And then, right, so that was the offense. We've not put the quarterbacks in there because I think enough said about the quarterbacks. Gino and Howard.
Well, to be honest, I mean, if we were just assessing starting quality, depth, age profile, and contract length on those guys, we've got 2 years on both. That's a B or a C. Starting quality, we've got B minus, C. Depth, A, because we've got 2 NFL caliber quarterbacks. And age profile, you've got very different ones. You've got veteran level, and you've got, 20? He's 22, I think.
Yeah, he's really young. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that would be good grades anyway. But yeah, you can see what we're putting on.
So to answer Jonas's question here, looking at the D-line and how thin it is in the draft, will Seattle focus on the O-line early or D-line? Let's get to the D-line and then we'll go through the focus.
For sure.
Here we go. Let's have a look at the contracts for these.
Yeah, so this is the highest paid D-line in the league. And to be honest, if we get a tune out of Draymond Jones with this defense, I think it's actually quite formidable. Mm-hmm. You look at Jaron Reed and what he was able to do from nose. He no longer has to do that. He can be defensive end and defensive tackle again, which is his strong suit. He's not required to be a square peg in a round hole anymore. He can play to his strengths. Draymond Jones in this system will be able to play to his strengths, and Leonard Williams settled in, contract situation sorted, twilight of his career now. This will be the last premium contract he has, and it will be probably the last chance he has, unless we trade him. It'll be the last chance he has to have a deep playoff run. Mm-hmm. So this is an incentivized D-line with a lot of money being paid to them, but they all still have their own motivations. And when you look at the bottom end of that chart, you've got Cameron Young, who I loved coming out of college from Mississippi. He was an absolutely outstanding nose tackle that constantly put pressure on, constantly penetrating the O-line. There's a huge amount of potential there. And Mike Morris, another guy that I loved out of the draft process, that now has a Michigan State defensive coordinator with him again. I think they're a project, like the other groups that I said we didn't have projects in. We have an old veteran group that's highly paid, backed up by the depth being actual starting quality projects. So I actually really like this room.
I agree. I think when Williams came in last season, he had a transformative effect. It took a lot of pressure off Reed because he was able to get through to the quarterback as well. I think the addition of Hankins is a good one at nose tackle as well, because like I said, it means Reed hasn't got to be there all the time. They can move him around the line, and Hankins is a big old human being. Cameron Young, I absolutely love as a nose tackle. A man that big should not be able to move that fast. It's inhuman. And Mike Morris nobody seems to be talking about him. It's really odd. And he was drafted last year with the hopes of him having this transformative effect, playing defensive end, and the injury scuppered him. Now he gets to play with the defensive coordinator who started to really turn his college career around and turn him into a weapon, he's not going to be asked to be at 300 pounds. You know, I have a feeling that might go, let's get back to where you were in college, and I can start using you that way, moving you across the line and seeing how disruptive you can be. It's a great rotation. I think anyone who, I mean, Miles Adams, we're waiting for his breakout, and we always have been. But rotationally, I think that's fantastic. And it's round pegs, round holes. I think, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing your grade with this one.
Yeah, to tie Jonas's comment into this as well. So if we address that, the kind of player I would want to add in here is right at the top or right at the bottom of that chart. I either want a project from day 3 with traits that match up with what we expect from a versatile D lineman in a Mike Mac system, or I want starting quality that can come in and replace someone like Jaron Reed, because we are paying him good money. He has got 1 year left. We can splash a bit more stardust on that, or we can back it up with another project. Anything in between, which and rightly, Jonas points it out, there isn't much between the top end and the bottom end. If you're picking a DT in the second round or late second round or early third, you're doing something wrong, because that's not where you're finding gem, unless someone has severely dropped out of the first round and you're getting them as a steal. That is not where you're going to be looking for D linemen. So, that's where I feel fits for us in the draft.
I'll get to the grade for that very shortly, but let's move on to the edge group.
I like this room.
I really like this room.
Yeah, I really like this room. This is probably my third best ranked room after running backs, wide receivers, because Derek Hall's got enormous potential and is actually quite a good fit for this system. I think he can play hybrid D end or outside linebacker, can peel off into coverage. He got really good coverage grades out of college, played wide receiver in high school. If you're putting a guy on the end of a 4 defense, a 4 front on defense, and it's a passing play, you don't need the 4. He's either able to go out into coverage, or he's able to rush the passer. He can do everything you need, depending on how versatile he needs to be. And I think he'll get more sacks and tackles for losses based off the confusion that we cause with some of the looks as well. He'll find himself in open space, unmarked, he'll be uncovered, and his closing speed and athleticism are outrageous. So I think he'll get some clean shots to hound some quarterbacks this year. And I think that kind of confidence that might come from planting a few QBs and some running backs might really sort of kick him on. So Derek Hall, I think, can really challenge for starting snaps with Nwosu and Mafe.
Like Boye.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've got good those starting 3 not starting 3 edges, because you don't start 3 edges, but those 3 sort of star edge players we've got on the roster, we've got them under contract on reasonable money, and then we've got a guy on a prove it deal and a guy with high potential on as a project in that room as well. I feel like it needs one more body, but it doesn't need to be starting caliber. We can take another project into that, and I think we've got that on the verdict tab later on. What's your feeling there?
I really like this room. Nwosu, I think, is just he's got that ability, and he's proved it now, where offensive lines need to know exactly where he is and where he's coming from. And when he's in the game, it's going to free up more for Boye or Hall, or maybe Taylor, who knows. And then, Taylor said, prove it deal, still waiting for him to actually have some consistency. If it comes, who knows. And then Levi Bell, as we've already waxed lyrical about him, I think he's someone that deserves a bit more playing time. He deserves to be on the roster, not just a practice squad player, because he is a different type of edge rusher. The size and the power to speed that he's got is fantastic. For me, he's the bull rusher that you want to just sort of try and collapse a pocket, as opposed to using speed or technique. Yeah, I really like that. Obviously, we'll get to the grade shortly, and then we look at the move on to the linebackers, shall we? The interior
before we scroll, one final thing on Maffei, something that I thought of the other day, which is really fun. I don't know how much you saw of the Baltimore defensive front and how they would line up, but they would line up rather than just offenses set and you line up, nose tackle on center, you square on. They line up off center. And we're going to see Maffei rushing centers. We're going to see Maffei rushing like way off outside and coming around the edge. Where just the angles and the opponents he's going to find himself up against, it's going to be bewildering for centers and things, because the thing that Maffei really kicked on with last year was the way he would set up tackles. He'd go, he'd chop one time, he'd spin another time. The handwork and the way he put it together and the way he'd combo off what he'd done previously, he'd shape the same way when he did one move, and he'd shape that way to do a different move. And then when it was counter with the first move, and he'd tie people up. Now he'll be able to do that on the same tackle 2 or 3 times, and then he's got a completely different opponent. Start again. From routine 1 to routine 2 to routine 3, new opponent, new lineup. So Maffei could have a serious breakout year in that chaos, amongst all that chaos. I love it.
Again, I think we're both big Maffei fans. I think his breakout last year just proved exactly why we drafted him. I think he's, as you said, the fact that he plans, but he mixes up the tools and the weapons for every rush. And if he goes to spin and then realize the spin doesn't work, he'll then go to a chop or a swim. I'm really excited about this group. This is like the group that I love, just seeing try to get to the quarterback. Then let's get on to the one of possibly the biggest discussion points during the off season for the Seahawks, the middle linebackers, or the linebacker room. Now, the first thing we notice, we've only got one player who's on more than a 1-year contract.
I thought you were going to say the first thing we notice is the graph is flipping the bird. It wasn't intentional. But no, yeah, it's the same observation though. The middle line there is the longest, and it is still only 2 years, and that is our biggest area on the roster, in my opinion, for getting bodies in to develop. Of the free agents we took on 1-year deals, I'll be surprised if a quarter of them succeed in those prove it situations. I think you'll really need to fit the age profile to get that extension. You'll need to fit a sort of veteran leadership profile as well to earn us committing to you for 3 or 4 years. It'll need to be that you fit the system, you have the right personality, you have the right age profile. Someone like Rashawn Jenkins is really going to struggle with the age profile. Everything else he ticks all the other boxes. So Baker and Dodson are perfect examples of players that can seriously impress, show that versatility, and show some leadership. Those two could be starting players, but we can't extend all of them. Those coming through that prove it deal, you're going to get paid what, 7-8 million on a committed 3-year at least basis. We can't do that for everyone. Obviously, we just can't. So you need to be a standout, and I think those two could be 2 players that make it, honestly. But they still have to be backed up by some projects in the draft. Maybe one project, one starter, starting quality or rotational standard.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Drake Thomas, there's a lot of chat about how good he could be. For me, he's a project there. O'Connell and Rattigan, special teams, pure special teams players. I don't see them as starting quality. I think Rattigan's come on, he started a few games where he's had to come in for injuries, and I personally don't see enough of him as a starting middle linebacker in the league. I think he's got tools, but I don't think he excels enough for my liking. There's nothing that I can look at from a coaching point of view or a projection point of view to go, if he actually focused on this, he would be bumped up to, starting rotation. I just don't see that. So I think that this is going to be the room to watch this year, especially with the draft, which is something that we're obviously, I think we're going to be looking at. And I think we're both. I think every Seahawks fan is in the same sort of mindset with it.
I tell you what, it's not. It's not the room to pick a name for your shirt. That's what it's definitely not.
Or if you do, you pick it and then you've got to change it the year after. So, right, then we'll move on to the safety room.
Yes, this is an interesting graphic because I think we feel like safety is an empty room, or it's a room for huge development. When you look at Jerick Reed and Kobe Bryant in there and think about what they could be in a Mike Mack scheme, it actually really isn't too bad. J Love, we know what we're going to get from him. He can do the free safety role and the strong safety role. The one thing I don't know, have we seen him blitz much? I think he had a sack last year. Mike Mack said this week, everyone has to be able to blitz. J Love, I think, did line up in the box a few times rushing. So Jenkins, we know, can do it. Wallace is Jamal Adams light, which is a scary thought considering what we got out of Jamal Adams. But if he can just stay on the field and be a versatile weapon and everything else, then we'll get our money's worth on that one rather than paying him $20 million to warm the bench. Jerick Reed, Kobe Bryant, we've got our projects there. Mm-hmm. So we've got starting quality and we've got some depth. And Jonathan Sutherland's got a special mention on there because he, in training camp last year, was outstanding. He was a real standout in camp, and injury. I mean, he went on injured reserve, didn't he? And we had to pay him some compensation, I think, because we released him and re-signed him without him passing a medical, if I recall. But the lengths that we went to keep him around, the cutting, paying the compensation, getting him back, there's a serious diamond in the rough there, as I believe to also be the case with Reed and Bryant. So a starting quality rotational piece in the draft at safety added to that room, I'm suddenly not too worried about it, honestly.
No, the same. Like I say, when you've got sort of Love, I think this will be, if he continues on the trajectory he was on last year, he will get an extension, no doubt about it, and he will be one of the leaders of this secondary. Jenkins was brought in as a veteran presence. I have got no issue with that. When you look at the age profile of this of mid-20s, having someone in their 30s on a 2-year deal, fine. He's not breaking the bank. He's obviously a proven commodity in the league. Not a problem with that. Wallace, see what happens there. Mm-hmm. Jerick Reed is just, in my opinion, he's just Diggs 2.0, just with more gas now. He's got more pace. I'm excited to see what he can do because he looked sensational in special teams before he got injured. Kobe Bryant is an absolute enigma, wrapped in a conundrum, tied off with a massive question mark on the bow. It's won awards opposite Sauce Gardner in college as a cornerback. I've said since we drafted him, he hasn't got the speed to play on the outside as a cornerback because he will get burned by some of these top wide receiving talents. He's a very intelligent and cerebral player, which I think moving him to safety would be a good fit. He just needs to learn the position. But if he's asked to move around, he's got the smarts to be able to do that really successfully in this sort of scheme, which is exciting. And then Sutherland, like you said, he was getting rave reviews throughout training camp. You know, when you did see him play before the injury, he actually looked like he could do a good job for us and is a project piece. I think safeties, personally, unless you're highly drafted, you don't really come into your own until you're about sort of 27, 28, and you've learnt the league anyway. So at the age of 20, 25, keep him for this year. If he does well in the rotation, you extend him for the year or two, and then just let him keep building that knowledge and foundation. I you know what? I don't mind this room at all.
It's not the most exciting room we've ever had, but it's nowhere near. Well, actually, I've said it. I was about to say we're not paying them very much, but actually, when you look at the wide receiver room, it's the highest paid in the league. When we look at the D line, it's the highest paid D line. When you look at the safety room, technically, with an asterisk next to it, it's the most expensive safety room in the league. But that's because the two guys that we're paying the most aren't on the roster. So, and on that note, actually, Quandre Diggs posted today that he was hanging up the cleats.
It's April
But
Fool's,
it's
mate.
April Fool's, yeah. And I don't know whether to believe him or not.
I've seen so many. Although the fact that him and Jamal are still out in the market, I think if they are in contract talks, someone's desperately trying to beat down their value. There was also an April Fool's that Pete Carroll has signed a 4-year advisory role with the 49ers. And I'm sorry, anyone that's listening, if you interact with these posts and go, "Oh my God," please just look at your calendar. Look at your calendar and remember.
Check it before commenting anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't just check yourself before you wreck yourself, really, with the keyboard, because I've seen so many people that made themselves look fools. Our friend Dan Viennes put one up saying that he's quitting his current job to go and become the rhythm guitarist in Steel Panther. And I genuinely think that people looked at that and went, "Oh my God, that's an amazing opportunity." And no, just no. But anyway, let's go cornerbacks. Why not?
Does this graphic surprise you?
No.
No, it doesn't. It surprised me when I put it together. I looked at it and thought, Spoon is the most recent acquisition, and he's the only person on there that we've got for more than 2 years. And that worried me slightly. And I think cornerback's a room that not many people are looking at ahead of the in the draft coming up. But we really ought to be. I know Trey Brown's in a contract year and did exceptionally well last year. Mike Jackson is back. We know what we get out of him. He's a starting quality corner in this league. Witherspoon's a stud, and Woolen, if he can put it together, is also a stud. One thing we said a minute ago was that Mike Mack had stated that everyone needs to be able to blitz. That worries me with Woolen. Because I can't imagine him coming off an edge, and even if he gets to the quarterback, I don't trust him to wrap up.
I don't trust him to be able to hit the quarterback with enough force to knock him off his feet. I would see him blitzing as a bit of, obviously, you see all these pictures of him in the gym, putting on some mass, pumping. That man is going to need like intravenous pies and pizzas to put on the weight that you need. As a coverage corner, he is exceptional. But in this defense, if you need to be able to blitz, I cannot for the life of me see Woolen trying to blitz past a tackle, because it would be comedy TV, because he would just get put around. Although with the speed that he'd have off the edge, it could be a surprise weapon. You never know.
You could use him to flush a pocket though, couldn't you? Because he'll come off that edge so quickly. You might be able to walk a quarterback into a trap on the other end. But honestly, I'm not looking forward to seeing that experiment. And the other flip side of that is you could say, oh well, most of our safety looks are going to be too high safety. You could have Woolen line up at corner and then drop into safety with Rashawn Jenkins, and that actually sounds like a nice idea, because you've got two ball hawks at the back end with speed and range, and they're long limbs ball hawks. That sounds nice, right? Until you realize that safeties are called safeties because they are a safety net on the back end that stop plays going to the house if something goes wrong. Well, Woolen's not great at tackling an open field, and a safety suddenly looks like a risky when it's Woolen that's your safety net. So Woolen needs to patch up the holes in his game more now than ever, I would say.
I think this is the biggest frustration, and anyone that's tuned into the pod or has seen my rants on X will know that tackling is my biggest thing. Reek and Quandre last year were the two that probably got the most heat from me, because Reek just looked like he didn't know how to tackle. And granted, he only converted to cornerback at college, so tackling was never something he had to do. But it's a fundamental thing in a contact sport, which should really be highlighted. And I'm hoping that that's something that Mike Mack can do for him, because if he can figure out how to tackle effectively. It doesn't have to be a massive hit. I'm not expecting him to be the second coming of Cam Chancellor when it comes to hitting players. I just want him to be able to stop people and not flail around with his arms and become a human turnstile. It's biggest frustration. But 2 years left for him. I mean, Trey Brown, like I said, prove it. This is his contract year. And I've rated Trey Brown since we drafted him. I thought he was a fantastic corner in college. I think he's just been really unlucky with injuries. Mike Jack, he's never going to set the world alight, but he's functional. And then you've got the vet in Artie Burns, who can come in, can play the nickel, can play on the outside. I think he's a good addition just to have in there, even if it's a 1 year contract, and we'll look to bring him on 1 year's going forward. It's not a great room, and I do think we need to look at long-term solutions with youth, but it's not the worst room. But no, saying that, shall we get to your verdicts on that?
Let's do the verdicts, yeah. I was going to say.
So, D-line.
There we go, yes. Yeah, so starting quality B-, which when you look at the amount of money we're paying the room, probably shows a little bit of the disappointment. You know, if you're getting B quality or B- quality out of an A+ value of payment, if you see what I mean, there is disparity there with what we're getting for what we're paying, and I think a lot of that's tied up in Draymond Jones's contract. So he's the key piece to kick on in order for that B- to turn into more of an A, which is where it should be for what we're paying.
Yeah.
Depth, I've got C, and that's mostly because we've got projects backing up, the starting quality, and there's a bit of unknown there, especially with Mike Morris, who didn't really get out on the field because of that shoulder injury that needed surgery. Age profile C, it is our oldest group. There is some youth in there, which has stopped it being lower grade for me. But contract length, as we saw on the previous graphics, looks really healthy, and we've got those stars tied up with us. So our D-line should be of a high quality for a number of years, to give a little bit of time for the projects to bear some fruit.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've hit the nail on the head with all of them. The depth, again, looking past what could be if we work in a 3-4, even in a 4-3, looking past the starters, I think it's, like I said, projects and vets who are not exactly world beaters, and the age profile as well. But then when it comes to D-line, I don't mind having a slightly older D-line, someone who's savvy and experienced and knows how to play the game, just so long as we stop these stupid runs. Because if we have another season where our inside linebackers are in the hundreds of tackles, again, that shows that something's gone drastically wrong up front.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, happy with that one. And then let's go on to the edge.
Yeah, so probably predictable grades. We both said that this is probably our third most complete and balanced room. And you've got starting quality B+, depth C. I mean, if you've got a practice squad guy and a guy that a lot of us thought would not be returning as your backups in Darrell Taylor and Levi Bell, I think that suddenly justifies the C grade. Mm-hmm. But then the age profile's great. You see edge rushers in this league at a high quality to 32, 33. So you've got to look at that and think that you've got an awful lot of tread on those tires. And the contract length, we've got the three main players there tied to decent contracts for 2 to 3 years. So really like the room.
Again, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you've said. The depth, that's my biggest concern. Darrell Taylor, I had such high hopes for him, and he just doesn't prove any consistency what he can do. He proves what he can do in sort of 3 or 4 games a year, and then he vanishes into the mist, into the ether. You just don't know what he's doing. And woe betide any coach who asks him to drop into coverage, because that doesn't look tidy, or to to cover the run. So, and Levi Bell is just it's an unknown. So, yeah, we factor that into the grading as well. Completely agree. Inside linebackers.
This was going to be a difficult set of grades, wasn't it?
Pretty sure people are probably just tuned in to see our grades on this one, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think I don't think I've been harsh either. Imagine having 4 categories, putting an F in both, and not feeling like you've been harsh.
Mhm.
I just feel like it's accurate. The age profile on that room is superb. The depth, though, is not great. There's a lot of projects in there that have not seen meaningful NFL snaps. I'm not confident in that depth at all. It needs addressing in the draft. It's an F. It's an F on the depth there. Starting quality, I've got B minus, and that has to only be based on what both of them did last year, and they were very highly graded linebackers last year. So starting quality B minus with an asterisk next to it. We've never seen them in a Seahawks uniform in this scheme. Contract length, there is no one there with more than 2 years, and the only player on 2 years, again, we poached off a practice
Drake
squad.
Thomas.
It's Drake Thomas, yeah, who is a fantastic fit for this scheme, by the way, but we've never seen him in it. So again, can't really grade too high there.
And this is it. It's just all the unknowns, isn't it? It's the looking at that room. There is no one we've seen consistently in a Seahawks uniform. You know, I've said about Rattigan, O'Connell's had some snaps, Drake Thomas, but then the two starting inside linebackers. PFF graded them well, but I don't always trust PFF based on their metrics. I'm much more of the eye test. And having looked through Baker and Dodson's sort of plays, doing a bit of sort of scouting on them, they could work in this, but again, it's the unknowns. And I'd just like to apologise to anyone who's watching or listening, because it does sound like I'm a prepubescent boy who's just going through the change. It's hay fever season, and it's absolutely killing me. So yeah, don't worry, I'm okay. And let's go to the safeties before I start squeaking too much.
Yeah, so the safety room, we've got a B minus for starting quality. I think Kobe Bryant backing up J Love, Jenkins, Wallace being the positionless defensive weapon that can, be put in one spot, represent something, do a completely different thing. That gives us our wild card sort of aspect. There's plenty to like in there. Age profile's really good. There's only one veteran in the room, really, in Jenkins. J Love is, I think he's actually 27. I think the previous slides probably show 27 rather than 26. Maybe I'm wrong. There or thereabouts. They're one veteran in the room. So yeah, starting quality B minus, depth is a C, age profile's an A, contract length is a B. I think that's actually, like we said earlier, quite a good room. Needs one addition in the draft for me.
Again, yeah, exactly the same as you. I think one addition in the draft, a young project or potential starting level safety.
Yeah, or both if the right situation comes up. I think we can definitely take two.
Yeah, and anyone that's seen our mocks, if you haven't, they're all on the YouTube channel. You can see all the safeties that we like in this draft that we take sort of further down in the draft. I think there's options there, obviously, depending on what we do by recouping draft picks and where we sort of look to prioritize. But yeah, again, agree with all of that. I don't think I need to expand much because you've hit the nail on the head and we've discussed it at length. So that is the roster as it stands. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in, listening to us talk about it for over an hour. It means a lot to us. Feel free, you can like and subscribe on our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X. We're everywhere, basically. Now, this 2-year rebuild, which the more and more I think about it, it could be 2, could be 3. Let's look at what's needed. So I said at the start of the pod, I think this is going to be 2 draft process. We're going to look to really fill some of those areas of need with quality. So I think we're going to look at, personally, I think it's going to be interior O-line and middle linebacker. I think they're 2 massive areas of need for this draft, which if we trade back, we'll get 1 in the first round and 1 in the second, with some project pieces after that. And then we'll look to sort of backfill as well with some cornerbacks. As we said before, we need to put more in that room, a bit more youth and longer contracts. And then the safety room, I think we've both said we're quite happy with. But let's look at what's needed. So also, just thanks to Mitch for putting all this together. He loves a spreadsheet and he's done such a good job with this as well. But let's go through it. Mitch, talk us through it. And then obviously, anyone who's watching, if you do want to comment on what we're saying here, let us just pop it in the chat, and we'll happily answer it. Just very quickly before we do that, Carl Crazy, who's one of our YouTube subscribers, it's not bad that you saw those April Fool's jokes and laughed, because I did the same thing. I laughed even more at the people commenting, thinking they were all real. There was so much hate and vitriol as soon as that Pete Carroll to the 49ers thing came out. I was like, oh, people are going to be deleting comments when they realize it's April Fool's. But yeah, there you go. Right, what's needed, Mitch? Let's go for it. O-line.
Yeah, so I've got here a starting quality interior lineman or guard and a versatile prospect. Versatile project. Doesn't need to be starting quality, but a tackle/guard prospect would be ideal. And you can see there how that would look with 2 4-year contracts added to what's already there. That looks like a really healthy project to me.
The age profile of that as well.
Yeah.
Just
well, that's actually really rare. Like the league doesn't do this. The league doesn't have an average age 23-year-old offensive line. What we're doing there is actually very different to what the league does. So might be why it's going so wrong, to be honest.
but again,
yeah.
in a year or two's time, who's to say that once they've got more experience in the league against different pass rushes, different players, and just different situations, that in 2 years' time, they're not one of the better units in the league because of the age and because of the experience they're gaining at that young age. But that also does lead us into the whole of, we've got really young players that have started, have got a lot of experience, and as soon as their contracts expire, they're going to be hot commodities.
Yeah,
exactly. So
true.
Agreed completely. Like I said, I think we're definitely going to be looking at a young guard. I think John Schneider's come out and said on his show that we're going to be trying to bring in some more veteran help on the interior of the O-line. But I think with that, we'll look for some youth as well, someone to coach up and sort of bring in. Also, if we have a vet in there, I'd be happy for Anthony Bradford to be able to learn from them, because I think he's got so much potential. Running back,
nothing to add.
Nothing. Yeah. No. Nada. Wide receivers. Again,
it would need like a very specific skill set to fall to us at the right spot, an intriguing prospect. But I don't think we'll be moving around the draft board to go after a guy, is what I'm trying to say. Someone falls into our lap. I think we could take them in the draft, but realistically, we don't need to do it.
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I think Lockett's got at least, contract expires at the end of 2025. He's got this season and next, and I think when his contract expires, he'll just call it quits.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
That's when we might look in the draft next year for another wide receiver. But it's not a glaring area of need. Like I said, you've missed out Eskridge there, so we have technically got 6.
How could I forget?
Oh God, I know. Just so much for us. Then tight ends, we address this as well. It's a need.
Yeah, it's a need, and I've put versatile project there because I think if you've got Farrah Brown for 2 years and you've got Noah Fant for 2 years, the ideal player to bring into that would be someone like Will Dissly, who can do absolutely everything. It wants to be a well-rounded skill set, but doesn't need to have starting quality. And because of the player not having to have starting quality, that could be a day 2, day 3 tight end, which works great for us. That I think tight end what we need on tight end will fall exactly where we would want to spend capital and the amount of capital we want to spend. So I think that's quite an easy, and it's also a class of tight ends where I think there are good fits for us as well in that area. So I'm not worried about tight end. I think we're going to get the opportunity to get a really good addition there.
Yeah, I mean, we've said there's a few at the back end of the draft that are those versatile projects that you can bring in, can do your job, but we could quite easily sit them and just let them learn for a little bit. It's not something that's high on my board. I would be massively opposed to, if we don't trade back and Brock Bowers is sat there, if we take Brock Bowers, I will rip my ever thinning and receding hair out, because I think it's just that'd be a wasted pick from my point of view.
I'd go and buy a shirt and put Bowers on it. I would. I genuinely would. I'd be so excited. It wouldn't. My heart would love it, and my eyes would love it. My head would probably. I'd wake up with a hangover, knowing that we had so many holes that we hadn't addressed, and we'd done that with the first pick. But
Best
if
player available.
you've got to. You've got to consider it if he's there. Honestly.
I couldn't see us with a first round tight end that might not get used. But then you never know. I said before, Grubb might decide actually, I quite like tight ends, and we never use them, so people don't expect it. Let's look at the defense then. D line, one versatile project.
Yeah, versatile project here. One thing that Mike Mack had that we don't necessarily have here is that long, bendy, athletic edge rusher that he used Jadeveon Clowney as the outside linebacker, defensive end sort of versatile player. We don't have that, and there are some longer defensive ends that have played outside linebacker available as projects later in the draft, and I think they supplement that group and that graphic really well. You'll get snaps if you can do more as well.
Also, bringing down the average age profile.
Needed.
But yeah, I'd take that. I think for me, it'd have to be a third or fourth rounder with a very high upside, and like I said, someone who's proved that they can do it all and are versatile. I wouldn't just want a speed rusher off the edge, or just some big hulking mass that can basically play nose or at a push. You put him at 3 tech and watch him wobble about. No, not for me. No. Yeah, absolutely fine with that one. Edge.
Now, this was interesting. I've put depth piece / project, but actually, if we got what we mentioned previously with a versatile edge outside linebacker, that ticks both of these. And I think actually it's the best way to add a project into the D-line room, but also provide that depth for the edge room.
Yep.
If we can find that right piece for that, I think that's a slam dunk, genuinely. And that's why when I look at edge rushes now, when I'm mock drafting, I tend to look at not a specialist speed rusher, like you say, not your more slender kind of pick. Someone like Jared Verse, I know, again, not likely to spend the first round pick on, but that would be someone that would tick both of those. So, yeah, I think we can do the old 2 birds, 1 stone there with a pick.
I'd be happy with that. I think, like you said, it's one of those, if you're going to get an outside linebacker, defensive end, edge, roll into one, someone who can do it all, then that is perfect for us. It means not spending more draft capital, not having to bring in free agents and pad out the roster. I'd be more than happy with that. And then we look at the inside linebackers. Yeah.
I think a depth piece here and a rotational piece are the real needs, and you can see how that transforms that graphic. It's still the bird, but it's it's better. And I think when you listen to people talk about this linebacker class, the inside linebacker class, people say, "Oh, it's not a good linebacker class. It's not a deep linebacker class." I actually think that misleads people to thinking you shouldn't take a linebacker this year. It's not the right year to do it. What it actually means is there isn't a inside linebacker that's projected to go in the first round. There isn't a slew of them that are going to be available on day 3 of starting quality. There are still linebackers in there that are good, and the reason why some of these guys are sort of wallowing around the second round, third round area is they don't necessarily have immediate starting quality that deserves a first round pick. Well, we've got Baker and Dodson. That's not what we need. We can take a Junior Colson, on day 2. We could, if we can put ourselves in position to take a player like that, fantastic. But that could be a rotational piece there, and then a depth piece in the 6th round. We've got quite a lot of players now coming in for interviews that are day 3 linebacker prospects. So that depth piece is something they're definitely looking at to add. So I think we can pull that off. And I don't listen to this. It's not a good linebacker class. It's not a good linebacker class if you want to be able to pick one up in the first round of starting NFL quality. That's not what we need anyway.
I look at this linebacker class as there's a lot of it's not a good linebacker class. It's not the fact that they're not good linebackers. It's that there are other positions that are highly touted in the league that are better prospects.
Yeah.
They're still good linebackers out there. You look at the tape on so many of them, and we've done it extensively. There could still be a starting caliber linebacker in the league for a team, or they could be a one-year project with the view to then step into that starting berth. But there are other players out there that just excel above them, but it doesn't mean they're not good players. So I'm all about that. I think linebacker is going to be a day if we can trade back and get a second. I think that there is one of those linebackers there that we will take. If not third or fourth round, I think we will take someone. We need to pad that room out and just sort of bring down. I'll say bring down the age profile. It's pretty standard there anyway. Safeties.
Yeah, so we said earlier that maybe one safety into this room would be fine because we've already got projects in Kobe Parkinson and Jerick Reed. When you consider that Kobe Bryant's been moved around positions a lot and Jerick Reed's coming back from a cruciate ligament injury, and Kayvon Wallace is a positionless defensive weapon that you don't really know where he's going to line up, I do still think there is room for us to take a free safety that is a rotational piece, and then a depth piece for strong safety. And the reason I say that is Kayvon Wallace is someone that will play extensively in and around the box. At least he'll start there. Kobe Bryant is much the same. J-Love can play both. Jenkins can play both. So for me, we'd want the rotational piece at free safety and a depth piece that doesn't need to factor in straight away at strong safety. And that is an idyllic situation. If there's a prospect there that can play safety and outside corner, that also helps the roster an awful lot. The more you can do in this defense and the more versatile you can be, I think helps.
Talking about corner.
There we go.
Here we go. Straight on.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Just a depth piece here. I think it doesn't need starting quality. Mike Jack, Trey Brown are fantastic depth for Spoon and Woolen, or actually rotational pieces to rotate with Woolen, as we saw last year. Woolen hadn't cemented a starting role, and while being exploited, was protected somewhat by that rotation. I think that will continue while he develops. So yeah, depth piece there to mix in case we can't extend Trey Brown next year. I think that makes sense.
I agree wholeheartedly with all of that, sir. I mean, with that's sort of our rundown of the roster as it stands, and then where we think we're going to look to bulk up either in this draft or the next. If you've been watching and you want to let us know your thoughts and feelings, feel free to grade our grades. We're more than happy to take the any criticism as long as it's constructive, and just please don't go for character assassination. Can't deal with it right now with my hay fever. My head might explode. You can do that by all means. You can like, comment, subscribe, find us on X, on our Instagram, or if you just want to chat to us in general, join the Discord. It is our pinned post on our X as well. Some exciting stuff coming up. We've got some good guests as well that we're currently in conversations with, trying to get the timing sorted. Obviously, being a British-based pod, we have to work it around our American guests as well to make sure that it's convenient for everyone. But that being said, next week we will be appearing live on the Hawk Zone Rundown with the boys over there, won't we? 8 o'clock GMT, which will be midday Pacific Standard. Yeah,
correct.
There you go. So catch us there. We'll still have a pod coming out. It won't be on the same day. We'll record one and then we'll pop it out for you next week as well. But apart from that, if there's anything you want to talk to us about, if you want to appear on the pod, send us a message, slide into our DMs. We're very accommodating. We'll happily arrange it for you. You don't have to be a podcaster. This is a community podcast. We want to talk to 12s everywhere. One of our guests he popped up in our comments earlier, Jonas. Guten Tag, mein Freund. anyone else, thank you so much for tuning in. Mitch, anything you would like to tell the good people that are tuned in today?
We don't swear on this pod, but I'd very much like to finish by repeating what Luke Wilson said within the first 20 seconds of the KJ All Day podcast. But I won't, and I'll just say go Hawks instead, I guess.
All about that. From me, from Mitch, from all of us, just going to say go Hawks. Enjoy the rest of your Easter holiday, and let us know if you want to appear. Like, subscribe, share, tell your mates, and have a good one.
Peace.
Peace.